Hi everyone. In this video, I will go over some main points. From Cheshire Calhoun's article, Standing for Something. Calhoun's paper deals with an account of integrity, which is something that everybody prizes, but not a lot of people have thought much about. Now, it may occur to some people that if philosophers want to know the meaning of a word, they should just look it up in the dictionary. But philosophers don't just want to know how a word can be used in a sentence. Philosophers define words because they want something more precise, something more meaningful. One way to put this is to say that dictionaries tell you how to get by in common speech with a word like integrity, but philosophers want to know exactly what integrity is, or what it should be, and why it is important. It is to that project that Calhoun addresses herself. She presents three theories or pictures of integrity that have been proposed by others. These pictures are the integrated self, the identity, and the clean hands pictures of integrity. She presents both what is good for them and good about them and what is insufficient about them. Let's begin with the integrity, the integrated self picture. Someone has an integrated self if her desires and values are endorsed wholeheartedly. So there are two parts here. The first part is that one must know one's own desires and values so that they don't get them from somewhere else. The second part is that one deliberates and chooses them intentionally. They endorse their own desires and values. When someone's self is integrated in this way, one has integrity, according to this view. However, Calhoun is suspicious of this simple view of integrity. Is integrity nothing but a matter of self-integration? She wonders. Let's say an artist paints a picture that few people like. Let's further say that this artist, who wants to be true to her artistic vision, but also wants people to like her work, decides to go against her artistic values and changes the painting to pander to public opinion and sell paintings. This artist has sold out, and most of us would say that as a result, she does not have integrity. Yet the integrated self-definition is satisfied because she does follow her own desires and impulses to sell paintings, considers what to do, and then decides to endorse her desires. She does what she wants to do, and she does it because she wants to do it. It fits the integrated self picture, right? Calhoun thinks that something has gone wrong. She says that integrity, one might intuitively think, involves not subordinating one's own judgment about what makes art worthy of being produced and appreciated to considerations of personal comfort, gain, status, and expediency. So she takes issue with the integrated self picture of integrity, because what's important about integrity is that one not go against one's own personal judgment that is also in line with what other artists as a community believe, just out of a desire to be liked and get money. For the philosopher Frankfurt, is his name, Harry Frankfurt, the theorist she uses to explain the integrated self theory, wholeheartedness is a necessary condition for having integrity. But that would mean that if a person is ambivalent or inconsistent about their desires on the one hand and what they would endorse on the other, that person could not have integrity. Calhoun disagrees. She uses an example of a Latina who is also a lesbian. Such a person would not be able to have a coherent identity because the values of the lesbian community are very different than the values of the Hispanic community. Yet this person would be able to have integrity in Calhoun's view, even though she resists resolving the value conflicts between these two sets of values. In other words, even though this person would hold inconsistent sets of values, the Hispanic community's values and the lesbian community's values, according to Calhoun, she could still have integrity. Therefore, the integrated self picture is flawed. Similarly, the integrated self picture is flawed in terms of ambivalence. She uses as an example a homosexual man who seeks a therapist's help. This therapist believes that the man can be cured of his homosexuality. The man has convictions that he is in fact homosexual, but he wants to honor the therapist's point of view out of a kind of humility toward his own view. For Calhoun, the man's ambivalence signals a belief that even though one has strong convictions, others should be listened to as well. There's nothing that goes against integrity for an agent to resist resolving ambivalence. This point foreshadows Calhoun's main point, which is that most accounts of integrity leave out the social element, but more on that soon. The next picture of integrity that Calhoun discusses is the identity picture. To have a character is to have some ground projects that one so strongly identifies with that one cannot even imagine not having them. One would not even be who one is without them. Integrity for the identity picture, integrity is for the identity picture, standing by those projects that derive from one's character. Calhoun asks, must one endorse those projects that one identifies with most deeply? So he or she is questioning the identity picture. She says that there is no reason to suppose that what one identifies with is necessarily also what one endorses and what makes one's life meaningful and worth living. So there is no reason to suppose that losing such identity conferring projects necessarily poses any great threat to integrity. In her view, then, one's conscious endorsements, what one stands for, is important, and it does not have to include one's psychologically deep identifications and impulses. In other words, one may not truly believe in what one wants to do. We will see that the problem with all three of these views is that they are too psychological, too dependent on personal virtue rather than social virtue. The next and last picture she presents is the clean hands picture. Not everyone may know what the term clean hands means. When someone is said to have clean hands, that means that they enter into an agreement free of moral culpability, moral blame. For instance, sometimes judges will throw out a plaintiff's case in civil court if the plaintiff in the transaction has broken the law herself and so doesn't enter the court with clean hands. For instance, if someone is suing someone for not paying back a loan, if it turns out that the plaintiff originally got the money by illegal means, then the plaintiff doesn't have clean hands. On the clean hands picture, integrity is a matter of endorsing and standing on some bottom line principles that define what the agent is willing to do. So to have integrity is to, quote, I'm quoting Calhoun now, use some actions as morally disagreeable regardless of their consequences. Persons with integrity will sometimes refuse to maximize good consequences when this goes against their principles, even if it does, in fact, maximize happiness. Notice that this position contrasts with utilitarianism, which requires that one act only according to maximizing positive consequences. For instance, think of having a close friend. You would never betray a friend, right? But a utilitarian would betray a friend's trust if doing so would maximize happiness, because that's what is morally right to do. So someone who follows principles like never betray a friend could not be a true utilitarian. On page 251, the case of George is discussed. George is an opponent of chemical and biological warfare and is offered a chemical biological warfare research job by a utilitarian who urges George to take it, thereby preventing a more zealous researcher from doing so. Notice that the contrast here is between what a utilitarian would do and what a deontologist like Kant would do. A utilitarian would say George should take the job because by doing so, he would prevent a more zealous person to perhaps make even more powerful weapons. If George takes it, he could prevent that scenario, therefore maximizing happiness. However, George thinks he should refuse on principle to participate in this research, regardless of the consequences. This is a deontologist's position. So if George takes the job, he will be acting against his own principles, which means he will be lacking integrity, according to the clean hands picture. The problem for the integrated self, identity, and clean hands pictures of integrity is that they all characterize integrity as a strictly personal virtue. But the example she gives about Clinton on page 254 is meant to convey the idea that integrity requires something more. It requires that the person with integrity acknowledge the views of other deliberators, other people who think and deliberate and consider how rationally how to proceed and perform actions. She says on page 254, close to the bottom, quote, integrity here seems tightly connected to viewing oneself as a member of an evaluating community and to caring about what that community endorses. Thus, it seems to be a social virtue. The Clinton example is about standing up for what one believes in, but it's not just a personal standing up, it's social as well. Let me give another example, and I leave it to you to read the Clinton example. I think it's pretty clear, but rather than go through that explicitly, I'll go through another example that I made up. Okay, so let's say that all the graduate students at Marywood want to have a representative on the President's Council. Let's further say, so they have more of a voice in the decisions made at the university. Let's further say that I have told several graduate students that I am in favor of this. I have even come to graduate student meetings and spoken out that I support a graduate representative on this committee. Then at a university-wide meeting, I am asked what I think about this issue in front of everyone. And I say that I disagree with it. What Calhoun is saying is that the reason I lack integrity is not just that I have not been true to what I believe in or I have stated myself, merely a matter of personal virtue. Rather, I have aligned myself with a cause that other people believe in too and have backed down on it. I am not standing for it after all. If I bend to pressure or have a failure of nerve, when push comes to shove, I let people down. I sell out. I say, you guys are on your own. I'm not going to stand with you anymore. That's the sense of social virtue that she's talking about. Two more quick points. Calhoun discusses what is wrong with hypocrisy. She argues that hypocrites mislead. They deliberately mislead us or others about what is worth doing, and therefore they lack integrity. Lastly, on page 259 at the bottom, Calhoun says that integrity is more than just sticking to one's guns. On page 260, about 10 lines from the top, she says that when something is worth doing and is under dispute, our concern to act with integrity must pull us in two directions. That is, integrity requires us to simultaneously stand behind our convictions on the one hand and to take the doubts of others seriously on the other. Neither ambivalence nor compromise indicate a lack of integrity. Even when we dissent from the views of others, we dissent with care. Having integrity is not just sticking to what one believes in is right, no matter what. It's standing up for what we believe, while at the same time fully appreciating and considering how others might disagree with us. So that's what makes it social, the social virtue, instead of just a personal virtue. I hope this video has helped you understand this challenging but interesting article. Thank you for your time and attention. Bye.